viewers, welcome back. My name is Adeola Fayehun, and as we've been celebrating the Women's Month this month of March, we've been talking with a lot of women on our program, celebrating them and talking about what they're doing, influencing other people. And today we want to talk with another woman that we think is doing something worthwhile, that we want you guys to know more about her. Her name is Divine Muragijimana, and she's originally from Burundi. She's a marketing strategist and events development consultant. She's also the co-founder and president of the Council of Young African Leaders here in the U.S., and the editor-in-chief of Applause magazine. Now, we're not just talking to her about all these things that she's doing, but we're also talking to her because she is a strong advocate for women's rights and youth empowerment. Divine, welcome to SaharaTV.
Thank you.
So good to have you. You look lovely.
Thanks. I love the green.
Wonderful. So Divine, let's just get right at it. You've been doing this youth empowerment stuff, organizing events and seminars and forums, and also women empowerment events here in the U.S., basically African women, African youth. Why did you decide to go into something like this? Like at what point in your life did you decide, you know what, I think I want to work with African youth, African women?
I think it has a lot to do with my history. As a survivor of civil war, conflict in Burundi, and during my years, I was 7 years old, but the one thing that has always stuck out with me is that as we were fleeing bullets, looking for safety, the people who suffered the most were the children and the women. And over the years, it really didn't stick out. You know, it was not something that I really thought about, but subconsciously, I really realized that the women and the youth are really the most marginalized groups in Africa. And their voice is not heard enough. And throughout my college, after doing a lot of research and after writing multiple papers, I realized that's what I wanted to do. This is my calling. This is my mission in life. And this is my purpose.
So, but how exactly are you doing it? I mean, I know you organize forums and events and stuff like that, but what has been your main message to African youth here in the diaspora and also African women?
Get involved. Because we see ourselves as we've left the continent. We're here, and most of the time we really read about Africa in the news, and we hear about all these changes, and Africa is rising, Africa is the next frontier, and we hear all about it in the news, but we really don't know what's going on the ground. So we talk a lot, and Africans will love to talk, I've discovered.
So basically, I mean, a lot of Africans, like you're saying, once we get here, we just want to focus on our lives and try to make it, so to say. So you're saying that we need to be more concerned about what's still going on back home as well? We
need to, because it does define our story, whether we're here or whether we're in Africa. What we do and what happens in the continent defines us, defines the narrative of the Africans in the diaspora. So we have to care about what's going on in the ground. We have to care about the policies that are being inducted in the governments, and we have to care about the issues, the problems, whether it's poverty, whether Africa is rising or not. We have to know.
The way you're talking makes me feel like you're saying that Africans need to know that we're the ones that need to save our own continent. Like, we can keep relying on foreigners going there to fix stuff. Like, we need to know what's going on and, get involved.
Here's the thing. My mom used to tell me that the greatest strength of Africa is its people. And it took me a while to really realize, to realize the truth in that statement, but Africans are the ones who will have to fix. Whether African is fixing or whether Africa needs to change or grow, Africans will be the ones who do it. You can depend so long on foreign aid or foreign investment, but at the end of the day, it's the local human force, the local resources, the local infrastructure that will actually make the change.
Let's talk a bit about African women. I mean, the culture view of African women is someone that has her place in the kitchen in many African countries. But now you're challenging women to step up and be involved. How exactly are African women supposed to get involved in what's going on their continent?
Okay, so let me backtrack a little bit. After I did some research, my main thesis after I graduated was women and their role in society. And after research, you find that women actually are involved in the society. They are the makers of society. But the only problem is that they're doing it on the you know, in the background. They are on backstage. While the men take all the credit, the women are actually the ones who are doing work. So how do they do it? I think in cases like Burundi or post-conflict regions, it's them taking the front stage on fighting poverty, on fighting unfairness in government policies. It's them fighting for education. And they're doing it. It's just that you have to give them a voice. You have to give them a platform. It's not so much about empowering women to be rebellious, but it's giving them a platform where they can be heard.
So that their voices can be heard.
That their voices can be heard.
Women also have a voice. I mean, they also have a voice, so their voices need to be heard. So, but how has the response been with all the events that you're organizing here in the U.S.? How has people been responding? Are you seeing any differences in the youth that you've been mentoring and the women that have been attending your programs and stuff? Do you feel like you're actually doing what you set out to do?
What I set out to do was mostly partnership. When it comes to women's event, let me state that I am not the most, I don't do the most work when it comes to women. There are so many other organizations. I can think of the African Development Organization in the Bronx. There is Ramatu Ahmed, who does a lot of work here. And the point is to partner with them, to help them in their work, to make sure that they have the most attendance at the events. When they have issues, making sure that they have an audience, so to speak. So that is with women. With youth, I've been more involved with them, mentoring them, planning events, giving them a safe environment where they can actually come and discuss, where they won't be judged for their ideas, where they won't feel like we're young and we don't have a voice. We want to make sure that they know that they are leaders. They are the ones who have to change, to change Africa, so to speak, or change their society, whether it's here or in Africa.
So let's talk a little bit about China's presence in Africa. I know you recently had this quote that Africans, whether they choose to believe the hype or not, should not worry about China. Instead, take advantage of the current growth. Do something. What exactly do you mean by this?
There has to be something that China is there. It's not, China did not just decide, Africa is there, let's go and chill. There is something attractive about Africa.
To Africa.
And even in Burundi, I was so shocked that when I went back home 2 years ago, it was that they were Chinese who spoke my language, who they assimilated. And there is a reason. There is something going on in Africa that is so attractive to them. So when we come here, we go to forums, economic forums, and we sit down and we talk about the implications of China being in Africa. What about the implication of Africans being in Africa? Because there is something in Africa. There is growth, but there's also problems. So let's not, print a glossy picture of Africa. The reality is that there are two Africas that coexist. And Chinese, they have decided that they can deal with both of them. So they went there and found the opportunities. Africans, if they want to do something, instead of coming here and talking about it, go back, it could be that you invest. You help organizations on the ground. You help businesses on the ground. Invest in an organization that's already doing something. Invest in a business that's starting an innovative initiative in Africa.
What about Africans that come here to study? Are you advocating in any way that maybe there's a brain drain in Africa? Maybe Africans, after they come here to study, can go back and contribute to the growth and development of their countries?
Since I'm here.
I know.
I am here. So I can just say, go back. And I went to school here. But one of the things I found out.
You do go back home.
I do go back
home. At least once a year.
Once if I can help it a couple times.
Yeah. And you have some programs going on.
I have some programs that are going back home. And I think Africans here, they have to make the decisions themselves. Whether you stay here, whether you go back, that's up to you.
You can still make
a difference. Even from here. Because, for example, there are youth programs in Africa. If you want to work with youth and you want to empower their education, you can do that. All you have to do is just go into your pocket and get that money where it hurts and invest in someone or an organization that's has creative ways of empowering youth.
They just have to get involved.
You have to get involved. There's no way around it. There's, you know, you talk about it and you...
Well, you're talking a lot about growth in Africa. Where do you see Africa in the next, let me say, 10 years or something? What do you see when you think about Africa?
Well, listen, the World Bank just released some stats where there's a 6% growth in the majority of Africa, right? So that growth it's going to continue to grow. So the opportunities will become even more. But I see in Africa where the SMEs, you know, the small and medium enterprises will grow, where it won't be an Africa where there's just entrepreneurs, but an Africa where there's established corporations that are led by Africans, that are run by Africans. And that's an Africa where, yes, poverty exists, because we can say that poverty will never exist in Africa, but it's an Africa where Africans will own their development, own their growth.
I see. So, but let me also ask you, because has there been anyone, you know, that ever said anything like, why are you doing this thing? Why are you bothering yourself? Or maybe, oh, because you're an African lady, oh, you're supposed to get married and settle down, have kids, stuff like that. I'm just wondering if anyone has ever, you know, said something like that to you, because we're Africans.
Well, let's just say I am an African woman, who is operating in a space where men dominate. First of all, as a marketing strategist and events development, that's it's a men's presence. They feel they're the marketers. And so they've always looked at me, they're like, why are you doing what you're doing? And for me, it's my mission. You have to understand, at the bottom, at the base of it, is that this is what I do. This is what I love. I'm a woman of faith. So when, you know, God said this is what you're supposed to do, this is what I'm supposed to do.
So you don't care?
I don't, like, it's very funny because I don't really care. Like, a while back, you know, I received a lot of hate mails. Yes, there was a lot of, last year was an interesting year. And
these are from people that would not do what you're doing.
Yeah.
But if you're doing it, there's a problem.
There was an interesting episode where just for a couple months, there was, my mailbox was just coming in with, and the thing is, they wouldn't identify themselves. But I realized that if they're caring enough to sit down and send those mails, then I'm doing something right. And when it comes to youth, it's such, like, the capacity of impact for youth. If you realize that you can nurture them, you can build them, you can empower them to go to school and define their own future. And not be afraid because their elders are saying, you need to listen to me.
Or you need to be a doctor.
You need to be a doctor. You need to be...
That happens with
Nigerian parents a lot. All the time. But if they realize that they can be good, they can develop their own skills, they can choose a career that empowers them and empowers those around them.
That's what
Imagine an Africa where the youth have taken it and they're not following the leader, so to speak, meaning government or what the press tells them.
But they are all truly involved.
They're truly involved. They've gotten their hands dirty, so to speak, and really defined Africa, an Africa that's theirs.
Well, I want to talk something briefly about, you know, building up on what I just asked about, people asking you why you're doing this, you're supposed to get married or whatever. You wrote an article not long ago titled, "Have I betrayed my African roots if I'm not married to an African man?" If I'm not with an African man.
If I'm not with...
Okay, so first of all, why did you decide to write that article? Are you dating non-African? Like, seriously, Divine?
I am not dating an African, but I'm not saying I'm dating an African either.
Okay.
However...
Are you single so we can put up your phone number?
Don't put my phone number there. But I've always been, whether I'm single or in a committed relationship, it's really never have been anybody's business but my own. And I've learned that being a woman, young, I have to keep that matter very private. But I've realized that my friends who are guys, I have a number of friends who are married, and all over, single. So I attend a lot of events where some African women have decided to marry, or they're happy with a white man. And most of what I hear is, so the reason that article was written is like, it was a series of months where I was hearing, why do these women marry white guys? don't they love their own skin?
How's that a problem?
Don't they love their own skin? Don't you love, isn't black beautiful? And I looked at them and I said, black is beautiful.
But love
is really colorblind. And so that was, I think I got upset a little bit because I realized that the double standard.
From African men.
It was coming from African men. Okay. And these men are the ones who are the first to say, women should go in the kitchen. And I've seen it. And I say I'm ashamed to say this, but I have friends, guys, men who are so convinced that women's place is in the home.
Is in the kitchen.
And is in the kitchen. So they have relegated these roles to women. And they're the first ones to say, why? Why would they dare?
But there are so many African men that are dating white ladies.
Yes. Some of them, by the way, those friends who are saying, why are African women dating
white?
They're dating white guys, white women.
I just want to read just an excerpt from what you wrote. You said, African men are not just competing with their village fellows any longer. The world has become a global village. So while these African guys are trying to get a girl that will belong in the kitchen, and find your slippers when you get home, the African women have a little black book with numbers that roll beyond the villages and the state boundaries. So now you could be in an African country dating a white guy or any other color. So therefore, if African men can't get their acts together, taking African women for granted, then there are other races willing to treat the women in a manner that is becoming.
That's exactly what it is. Like I think I should add to that. But I can tell you that your friends and some of my friends, they have their little black book.
A little black book.
Yes, of numbers.
So I guess one of the ways you empower our people is that don't just try to stay glued to your culture. It's becoming a global world right now.
It's a global village. But in terms of Africa, it's a global village. It's a world where we can learn from each other. Okay. And not just, we always tell people, you need to learn about Africa. But what about us learning about others? And what about us even learning about our own? I can tell you there are many people who don't know Burundi. They don't know that, the growth, the 4.5 growth that's going on right now in Burundi. Wow. They don't know, they can hear about Rwanda. They don't know about Angola's, it's like a gold mine. But because we are so focused on our sphere of influence, so to speak, in our communities, or
we're limited.
We limit ourselves, though. Yeah. We limit ourselves because we're very much Anglophone versus Francophone. That's an issue that's huge.
But speaking of Burundi, can you just tell us briefly while we round up some of the things that you're doing on ground in Burundi right now?
Okay. One is I'm working on a youth program, and I'm working on it's almost like a business incubator where we're going to train young people to start their own businesses and market themselves, which Africans don't learn how to market themselves. It's those, so there's a business incubator in Burundi. And then right now I'm working with a project where there was the market in Burundi, largest market, burned down a couple weeks actually. And about $300,000 worth of goods burned down. Women don't have don't have livelihood. They have to pay loans, and at the same time find food for the children. So I'm helping
to raise funds for them to get back on their feet, so to say.
Providing seed money for them.
And not just that, you have the Council of Young African Leaders event coming up here in New York.
Yes,
right?
Actually there's two of them. We're partnering with NYU. And on April 6th, so this is a great event for those Africans who want to go back. Great. They need to know what's going on. So that's one. And then in October we have the CUNY Young African Leadership Symposium, and you'll be hearing more of that. So
So briefly, I just want you to look at the camera and talk to an African young person or African woman that may be watching this today, and just challenge them, so to say.
Get involved. Whether it's being here, whether it's being on the ground, but do something, because at the end of the day, you're the one who change Africa, and talking about it and writing about it will not do anything. You have to get up and do something.
And you don't have to be on the continent.
And you don't have to be on the continent because I will do a plugin for the Africans in the diaspora. It was founded by Salome Lema, and basically all you have to do is fund an organization, and you choose whichever organization you want to fund. So go and check out Africans in the Diaspora. It's a great organization, and it's one of those organizations that's really close to my heart because it's changing the way we see aid. It's changing the way we associate aid in Africa. Instead of foreigners investing in Africans, Africans are investing in Africa.
Wonderful.
So,
well, now I'm sure now you see why we had to interview her with all this good stuff that she's doing. But Divine, how can people reach you if they want to know more about what you do?
Well, there are a couple ways. You can follow me on Twitter, Africa for Africa, or you can email me, let's see, the cyl@gmail.com. That's my email, and you would reach to the Council of Young African Leaders. But also Applause Africa. So check us out, Applause Africa, the Council of Young African Leaders. I have my personal Twitter. Reach out to me on Facebook.
Okay.
There are a couple ways. I'm reachable, I'm accessible.
Well, Divine, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you here today.
Thank you.
And just finding out more about what you do. I hope that she has inspired someone today. So thank you so much for coming to the studio.
Thank you.
All right, viewers, that has been Divine. And please pronounce your last name one more time.
Muragijimana.
What does that mean, by the way?
Given to God.
Oh, wonderful.
See,
this is Divine, given to God.
Given to God.
I'm sure that you've enjoyed her. Stay tuned, we have more program to come.